Hello, welcome to BPHL Fest 2020. My name is Nate Gatch and I'll be your MC for today. Whether this is your first BPHL Fest event or you attended last year's inaugural festival, we're glad you're here and joining us in celebrating innovation aligned with a purpose. Before I introduce our speakers, just a few special notes. Number one, the cameras of attendees are not online, so you can see the speakers, but they cannot see you. Number two, there will be time for a short audience Q&A at the end. So if you have a question you'd like to ask one of the speakers, simply type them in the chat function of this session at any time during the presentation. We have thousands of registered attendees from all over the world, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as time allows. So if the speaker is speaking and you have a question for them in particular, please type it into that Q&A function while they're speaking. Number three, if you lose internet connection during the session, please exit your browser and rejoin the session. Fresh air, access to parks, and other green spaces are something that many of us take for granted. Today's speakers will each talk about why green is good and fresh is best when it comes to open space and air quality in urban communities. Please join me in welcoming Samir Dalal, Planning Manager for the Philadelphia Land Care Program, Meg DeBrito, the Director of Greensgrow, and Jerome Shabazz, the Executive Director of the Overbrook Environmental Education Center. Samir, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you to everyone who's with us. So as Nate mentioned, I work with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, also known as PHS, specifically with the Philadelphia Land Care Program. So before we get into what exactly this program is about, I wanted to share generally about PHS, the fact that we partner with more than 250 neighborhoods across the region with the various services, a range of free public gardens, to landscaping, to providing trees, but really engaging gardeners and garden lovers as advocates for change. And so we're more than just the flower show. These are our 4 priority impact goals that we hope to address with everything that we do to build strong relationships, create healthy environments, increase access to fresh food, and expand economic opportunities. So to begin with land care, I wanted to tell you a little story of Miss Sheila Parker, who lives in what's currently called the Mantua neighborhood in West Philadelphia. So she grew up in her neighborhood. Her grandparents bought their home there in 1935. So generationally, she's been there for some time. And she remembers as a child that vacant lots had been once a garden-filled point of pride, is what she said. She speaks now that she returned that it's filled with trash and litter and debris, how there's a lot more crime in the neighborhood. And then there's a lot more vacant lots that are like this, that are filled with debris. It's really an overgrown eyesore. Now, she's not alone. There are over 40,000 vacant lots within the city of Philadelphia, most of which are in that same condition that Miss Sheila Parker has experienced. Lots like this that really aren't looking good. You see there's a mattress there, there's trash, it's weedy. It's just not something that you want to walk by or you want to live by in your neighborhood. Here's in the springtime, it's just not something that is appealing. It's kind of, you don't know what's in there. In comes the Philadelphia Land Care Program, where we at PHS, we collaborate with the city of Philadelphia very closely to clean and green these vacant lots. So we convert lots like this into a beautiful lot like that. Now, one of the reasons that this works so well is not just the treatment of clean and greening lots, but also how we choose where we work. So again, like I shared earlier, we collaborate really closely with the city of Philadelphia to identify the areas that are the highest needs. We also work with community residents who let us know where the lots are that really would like to be clean and green. We try to prioritize areas around schools or corridors or high traffic streets. We also prioritize lots that are piled close together in a tight-knit pocket. So here's an example in which you can see the blue little parcel squares are ones that we are working in. And then the dark gray ones are the ones that we are currently not working on, your vacant lots that are there. So you can see around this school here would be a great place for us to do our work. Now the work that we do in cleaning and greening these lots is we completely wipe out all the trash and debris and weed and everything that's there. And then we'll grade it so that it's more convenient for maintenance later on. We'll plant grass, hydroseed grass on there. And then the next step is we'll install this post and rail wooden fence with an opening big enough for people to get onto and the contractors to do the work to clean it, but not big enough for a vehicle to get on there, so it prevents extra debris dumping. And then on the large lots, we plant trees. So we create neighborhoods that look like this and this. They're beautiful. It really is a sense of pride for the community. So going back to our 4 priority goals, I'm going to walk through on how we address each of these. So building strong relationships. We, again, work together with the community to identify where these lots are. We'll also sometimes, occasionally, we'll have programming on these lots. For example, churches have used it, community organizations have used it. We've even seen hospitals do, day check-ins on these lots and vaccine distributions. But really what I love is it provides access to green space. So here's a program. You have family cookouts and birthday parties. You have football teams practicing because they don't have a park nearby. You have kids coming out and playing. So here's some kids playing cricket. And then we even see horses grazing on our lot. So we see everything, but the community embraces it. That access to healthy space also provides a healthy living environment. It really helps get people out there. But additionally, we've seen some impact studies that have been done at the University of Pennsylvania that have shown an increase in outdoor exercise. They did this wonderful heart monitor study that showed that people, when walking across or near lots that had been cleaned and green, had less anxiety than walking by lots that had, were in disarray. Those studies have shown up to a 29% decrease in gun violence in neighborhoods in which we clean and green vacant lots, up to a 69% decrease in feelings of depression, and it also impacts the local economy. Increased access to fresh food is a little bit of a stretch, but we've been planting some pollinator gardens on our lots. And so here's Miss Aminata Calhoun, who she loves her little pollinator garden that's back there. And then creating economic opportunities, which I think is really, really important for our work here in Philadelphia. And so we work with 15 professional contractors that are mostly local to Philadelphia. They're 80% minority owned, and they're small, medium scale contractors, providing over 230 jobs generated. We also work with community organizations that hire within the neighborhood, so like CDCs, and we work to build capacity with these organizations so they're able to do more and more work. Finally, we have our Routes to Reentry program, which works with formerly incarcerated returning citizens, and we train them in the landscaping industry and get them connected with jobs with the contractors that we work with. And so this is an interim land use program, which will eventually lead to a developed site, but providing a green space that really is healthy for the community. So we work with about 1/3 of the vacant lots in Philly. A little over 2,000, that's 16 million square feet of land. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. So we have residents like Miss Sheila Parker who are happy. She loves her lot now. And Miss Calhoun, who's joyous, and she's trying to do some programming with kids on her lot to really get connected and build a vibrant community. If you have lots that you would like cleaned and greened, you can let us know, identify them, and we'd love to work on them if possible. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Samir. So just before I dive into anyone else's questions, because I get to be the moderator, just if someone is looking to get involved locally, not just letting you know, hey, this site is an eyesore, or hey, we'd love for you guys to greenify this space, how could they get involved with your organization?
Yes, so PHS. Is there feedback?
There was for a second. I think it's gone already.
All right, sounds good. So at PHS, we have plenty of volunteer opportunities. You can go on our website and you can find out, as much as you want. Our website is phsonline.org. There's a volunteer section there. With land care program, we do organize some occasional volunteer activities that we can do for a group. But we could also get you connected with community organizations. But with our tree tenders program and community garden program and anything, we have plenty of volunteer opportunities available.
Very cool. Excellent. Thank you. So I'm going to say that hopefully, based on the chat, you're going to see some new opportunities pop up pretty soon for some areas in West Philly, recommendations based on Ken's text just now. And it looks like we're ready to move on to the next speaker. So next up, we have Meg DeBrito. Meg, you're up. Oh, Meg, I think you're on mute still. Hold on, let me see. There we go.
Hi, my name is Meg DeBrito, and I'm the director of Greensgrow in Philadelphia. And I'm here to speak to you today about urban land reclamation and its role in community and social transformation. Greensgrow is a 23-year-old nonprofit urban farm and garden supply in the dense urban core of the city. We have one location in West Philadelphia and another in Kensington. And we are an organization that's born out of land reclamation. At the turn of the century, the land that we practiced on was a steel galvanizing plant, and it was alive with relationships and community jobs and a sense of prosperity. But as global relationships changed, so did many local relationships. And in cities across the country, we start to see urban parcels that open up and look like the one that you see here, where the land is the natural landscape is starting to reclaim our built environment. And in the early 2000s, I was a young architecture student living in North Philadelphia and riding my bike regularly past pieces of land like this, something that Greensgrow looked like in the late 80s and early 90s. And I was thinking a lot about the built environment and the natural world and their relationship and their intersection. And I started to ask myself the question, what does it look like to farm in an urban context, to fit the farming to the farm in a place where we've lost many contextual relationships through the loss of contour and the loss of land form. And so I understand what it is to be the vegetable in the forest, or what it is to terraform, to be able to plant in a hill. But what does it really look like to engage in urban ecosystem as a farm when we have lost what I was saying is contour and context due to mapping and cardinal relationships? Many urbanists and designers engage this recreation of vacant space in urban settings by imposing aesthetic built relationships on the land. And this is deemed placemaking. And the way that we approach this is often to reorganize elements in the urban space. And so we take blight and we make it adaptive reuse in the way that we frame and understand the fragments of our previous urban spaces. But all of this meaning is given by what we see and what we know, and landscapes are not actually voids. They're a series of intricate relationships, both above ground and below ground, between plants and the soil, and they're digestive systems that embody a lot of transformation. And so in many moments, we actually can't see and we don't know what's happening in the landscape. But we have been part of the landscape for millennia, and we are part of that series of relationships. Agriculture is, at its most base, the relationship, our relationship to culture and our relationship to the land. And in urban context, relate to the land through the resources that we have. So this may look like container gardening or organizing bricks in a way that functions as a garden. We might look to small-scale digestive systems, something like worm castings. We might engage the landscape through using our garden clippings as mulch, or through companion planting to use the smallest scale footprint that we can while increasing the amount of productivity of our land and how much we can actually grow in that space. Each of us really derive identity in the landscape. There's smells, tastes, sounds, and textures that we encapsulate in our memory and can be transported back to those places and that feeling very quickly, like we were in early childhood all over again. And so we can't help, when we come to the land to farm it, to garden in it, we can't help but bring ourselves to the land in our land practice. And therefore, we also can't help but bring ourselves together in public green space as a shared practice. And this is a place where we can begin to form new relationships and understand sort of a practice of shared leadership in community green spaces. Greensgrow, as I said earlier, is a place of reclamation. It started out as a place that had a decent amount of toxicity and has allowed itself transformation through early on sort of aesthetic relationships, and then later through action and activity that has happened through shared cultural practice of farming. PHS, as Samir was noting earlier, has been huge in this process for many parcels throughout the city, through both their land care initiative as well as the City Harvest Gardeners Alliance or Growers Alliance, and that has allowed close to 420, I believe, actually, farms and gardens in the urban context of Philadelphia. And this has transformed the way we see possibility in our environment and how much food we can grow in the urban context. Greensgrow within that has become a resource for others to draw upon, and we bring many materials here: beneficial insects, soil, resources such as plants, perennials, edible vegetable starts, and we grow much of that on site. We also have become a resource for knowledge and an epicenter of the community. And we are a network of shared growing practices that we can continue to employ within the city. In the land, we can rethink the patterns of our engagement and possibility more quickly, because there's cyclical changes and iterations in the land that happen seasonally and also annually as our as our climate begins to shift. And so we can actually rethink our approach to shared social engagement through playful inspiration in the land, because it is a malleable resource. And in that way, we can also redefine story. There have been so many people who have become part of Greensgrow's story and have allowed that story to sort of spin open in new iterations across the city. And as we reclaim our urban habitat and our spaces, we are able to redefine that tapestry of shared possibility, and we can transform it into a shared vision for the future. Thank you.
I'm probably still, there we go. I'm not unmuted anymore. Meg, awesome to know how the green space is being utilized, how it influences the entirety of the city. When you think about the whole concept of think globally, act locally, what would you suggest for anyone who's maybe living in an urban space, doesn't have a ton of land that they have access to, but wants to do something in the spirit of what you're doing with Greensgrow?
Yeah, I think it's not measure the space you have, but the impact of the sort of micro habitat that you're creating in anything that you derive. So if you want to plant a small garden in a bucket, deciding to grow vegetables that could feed someone and nourish someone, or deciding to plant a pollinator garden that would then, sort of resource any insects and bees in the environment, is a great way to have like micro investment and larger impact. And as a city, when we do that more and more, we become a more resourceful network of growers and gardeners and habitat.
And then just quick follow-up question. If anyone is interested in maybe doing some plants that are hard to kill and good for pollinators, any suggestions for what would thrive in the city?
I'm sorry, so hard to kill and?
And would thrive in an urban environment for pollinators.
Oh, for pollinators specifically. Well, I think that there's a lot of, so a lot of pollinators are perennial plants. Mountain mint is a beautiful, wonderful perennial plant. It's native, and it also is a great pollinator for bees. It's a beautiful flavor in their honey, and it's very, it'll survive on its own. No worries about killing it. It'll come back next year.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Meg. And
Wait,
I think.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd just like to say that if you would like to engage with us, we also take volunteers, and we are open for sales in the spring. And you could follow us at Greensgrow on Instagram, or you could follow me at Meg DeBrito, and our website is greensgrow.org.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for the plug. And I'm sorry I didn't ask for it first. All right. Looks like last but not least, we get to hear from Jerome Chavez. It looks like he's clocking. He'll be with us shortly. There you are, Jerome.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Well, thank you, Nate and Bee Philly community. Glad to be here. My name is Jerome Chavez, and I'm the executive director of the Overbrook Environmental Education Center. I'm really pleased to talk about our work in West Philadelphia. Our center, the Overbrook Center, is on Lancaster Avenue. What's exciting to us is that we have this wonderful history of transformative work around green space and stormwater management, and the interface of how people react and respond, and particularly how green spaces impact our public health. And so, this conversation, greener for good, green space is vital to our health and our well-being. Our project on Lancaster Avenue is an example of how blight is more than just trash. When we came to the site at 6150 Lancaster Avenue in 2002, it was a horrific site. You had these circumstances that really didn't respect the dignity and justice, environmental justice that is necessary for a healthy community. We wanted to follow a principle that turned around this whole idea of living around waste as a norm. And there's a principle that the president of our organization talks about all the time, and that's, a poor person's wealth is really their dignity. When you have very few resources, it's below your dignity to be able to function and to exist around trash, around debris, and it's very inequitable when we look at these conditions in some parts of our city more prevalent than others. And so when we came out to the site, we were seeing all of this trash. It was about 40 tons of trash that we had to clean up from the site, and cars, there were refrigerators. It was just this huge dump site that was encompassing the entire community. I mean, you look at this aerial photo, you can see where a tremendous amount of abandoned cars and debris was located right around homes where people lived. And so you have this carbon production, you have this trash, you have this seepage of fluids and contaminants going into the soil. And so what we did was we came up with this concept that made our work not only a work around improving the environment, but improving people's lives. And so we had this concept of a social architecture for resilient and sustainable communities built around some fundamental principles. And the 5 principles are inclusion, equity, prosperity, trust, and justice. And so we started moving into this whole realm of environmental justice around the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origins, income, and respect to the development and implementations of laws. We wanted to make sure that our work was well informed and that it was a just process. And so we developed design principles that we think, were beneficial to this project, and it has very strong capacity to endure over time. And that was to have sustainable practices, to remediate the potential hazards that was in the waste that we saw, to integrate people with nature, and establish this sort of place that people want to go to beyond home and work, and to create this sort of citizen science approach to our activities. And the biggest and most successful thing that we were able to do, and I don't know if this slide really does justice, is that we were looking at the impacts of the environment on the citizens' health. So we looked at air quality and how air quality impacted asthma, and we looked at severe heat issues and water issues. And what it did, it created this sort of vesture by which people were able to not only look at the work we were doing environmentally, but it answered a question: why should I care? And then we were able to have a better question to answer: what can we do about these problems? So we wanted to look at our thinking, our emotions, our habits around driving change, making sure that the conditions after we cleaned them up weren't just repeated again. And that was a result of a whole lot of soft work that we call it around expressing the values of keeping your environment clean. So the site that we just identified, all of those contaminants and all of those cars and vehicles, we underwent a variety of infrastructural developments, and we were able to put in some sustainable designs. The site turned out to be a brownfield site with a whole lot of blight. So we looked at the stormwater management issues and how we could reuse it for urban agriculture, create a sort of community-based art and education. That third place again, that community safe space, was a big part of our model. And if you were to come to the site today, it looks more like this picture, where we were able to put in bioretention basins and swells, and we collect the stormwater on site. We have one of the city's first elevated greenhouses on that same location, and butterfly gardens and pollinators, and do a lot of education around urban ag. We had to deal with this whole idea of reclaiming green space in an urban setting. But the beauty of these intersectional things that we do, and I think Samir talked a little bit about it, is that, when you bring back native systems or natural systems, it encourages art, it encourages all kinds of outdoor activities, science, collaborative partnerships, workforce development. There's a whole host of education, a whole host of wonderful concepts that are derived from establishing our green space. So for us, it's not just transforming gray spaces and brown spaces into green spaces, but it's bringing back dignity and self-respect within the communities. And we make sure that our work is synonymous to growing environmental systems as well as growing our community. And so, at the Overbrook Center, it's a wonderful example of how to transform green spaces. And we have a little video that we're going to show that speaks a little more to the point.
We started the center, at the time we were working at Overbrook High School and other high schools, and what we realized is that our students weren't experiencing the environment. They weren't going outside. They weren't learning about the built-in natural environments around them. They were only identifying the environment as something that polar bears lived in, and whales and penguins, but they weren't thinking about the air that they breathed, the land that they walked on, the soil where
Doesn't seem to want to go. Try it one more time.
we started.
Hey, Jerome, just to pop in, it is playing for all of us. I'm not sure if you're able to see it or not.
I can't.
Okay, I will cue you back in as soon as it stops.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Started the center, at the time we were working at Overbrook High School and other high schools, and what we realized is that our students weren't experiencing the environment. They weren't going outside. They weren't
We started the center at the time we were working at Overbrook High School.
learning about the built-in natural environments around them. They were only identifying the environment as something that polar bears lived in, and whales and penguins, but they weren't thinking about the air that they breathed, the land that they walked on, the soil where food came from, as well as the water in their neighborhoods. Students were always asking, Mr. Shabazz, why is there so much trash in our neighborhood? Why does our neighborhood look different from other people's neighborhoods? What's the problem with that? And I said, you know, there's a lot of problems. Some of it is institutional, some of it is systemic, some of it is historic, but the biggest part of it is that every generation we have an opportunity to correct some wrongs that's been done before. And I said, let's see if we could do something different. So we started looking for sites that really needed cleaning up. And this site was one. It used to be a former state store. Pesticides, herbicides, all kinds of chemicals were left behind. There were cars on the site. So over a course of a year and a half, we cleaned up all of the contaminants and all the hazardous waste and all of the trash and debris, and gave it a new identity. And then we started to establish art, and then we put the mosaics in and the artwork, and it just became...
Well, that's not my house.
Thank you.
Very good.
Still in office. Hi, Nate.
No worries. Well, so Jerome, and unfortunately, I'm sorry for the buffering. I think we might have lost some of the message in there, unfortunately. But could you speak to a little bit of the spirit of the video? Because we were talking about a lot of how we're talking about disparity, we're talking about inequality, and we're talking about how green spaces help to make that equity in our worlds more possible. If someone wants to get involved with the organization, how can they best reach out to you, or how can they spend their time?
Yes, one, you can reach out directly to us by email at the info@overbrookcenter.org, info@overbrook, overbrook center.org. You can still call it the old school way, 215-879-7770, and Facebook and Instagram, all the great social media stuff. But the beauty of our work is we learn by doing. We work with communities. We are responding to the needs of communities, and we always look at the outcome as part of the value of what we do. And we make sure that citizens are creating an infrastructure that's a new normal, that everybody feels healthy and vibrant within their own respective communities, irrespective of their zip code.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you, Jerome, for your time today. And thank you to all of our speakers. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have left for today. So I want to take this time to thank Meg, Jerome, and Samir for their inspiring innovation. And thank you to the audience for your participation and your attendance. So please enjoy the rest of the festival. Make sure you log in for lots of stuff. There's a lot of good things coming over the rest of the evening and the next 2 days. So thanks a lot.
Thanks. Take care. See you, Meg, Samir. Bye.